If you've ever wanted to learn to carve stamps but you didn't know where to start, this is where you start. I'm going to give you a very simple and straightforward approach to stamp carving. And when we're done, you're going to have the skills that you need to go on and carve all sorts of things. So we're going to start with circles. And I believe that circles are one of the best ways to quickly build your skill and dexterity at carving stamps. A straight line is pretty easy, but carving something that's got a lot of movement and curve and shape to it, it's going to be a little bit more challenging. And right out of the gate, you're going to be able to understand how to maneuver your blade and the material, and then you'll be able to go on and do more. Now, I will tell you, stamp carving is not a very forgiving craft. So I've been carving for years and years, and I still allow myself the imperfections. I allow myself not to be too concerned about them, and I don't carve for perfection. I carve for the expression and the handcrafted feel, the natural hand style that comes through when I carve stamps. So hopefully my imperfections will allow you to be more forgiving of your imperfections as we go down this road. So let's get started. I'm going to teach you how to carve 3 different stamps using the same design. So we're going to take a very simple concentric circle design and we're going to transfer it to 3 different pieces of rubber material. And they're all going to turn out to be 3 different stamps. It's going to teach you a lot about positive and negative space and give you an understanding on how to think about the stamps as you start to carve them and remove the rubber material to create your design. Also, we have to go over materials. It's a must. So let's get through this and then we'll start the carving fun. So for carving, I like to use both a linoleum cutter and an Exacto blade, but if you only have one or the other, you can get by with just one of these tools. This blade by Speedball is a V-shaped #1 blade, and it's a pretty universal blade, and I think this is one of better blades to start with. My favorite carving material is the pink Speedball Speedy Carve. It's very durable. Here's a sheet I've been working on, and I have it stained on one side, just like I have a little piece here that's stained a darker black. It helps for better visual as you're carving your stamp. And the way to do that is you take an ink pad and you smear the ink all over the surface. You let it sit, and then you come back in and you wipe it off, making sure to remove all of the residual ink, and then you have a stained sheet of rubber material. I like to use this beat up box, repurpose this box. It works for a couple of purposes. Number one, it works as a riser so that I can put my rubber material right on top of here while I'm carving, and it's not so low to my desk so that I have to hunker over. I also use it to store things. I use it to store extra blades. I have some in different sizes, different quantities. I have some leftover blades that I sometimes try to resharpen, and some Exacto blades. I have extra handles for different sized blades. If I want to use several different sized blades while I'm working on one project, it's always good to have an extra handle or two. I also use it to store burnishing tools, so when you transfer your design from your tracing paper to your rubber material, it helps to have a tool to help make that process go easier. You could use all kinds of things, a gift card, gelato spoon, popsicle stick. You could use a regular spoon, a little wooden spoon, or you could even use the back of your finger with your fingernail. So, okay, now you need to have some paper. First off, you need to have some tracing paper, not a lot, but just a little bit. It really is important for tracing and transferring your design to the rubber material. You want to have extra pieces of scratch paper, big and small is good. Also, you're going to need a cutting mat, and if you don't have a cutting mat, look around your house. Some of these items will work as well. Inks we're going to use are going to be either dye-based inks or pigment-based inks. Those are the most readily available, and I will leave some links below on where you can buy those. But we're just going to keep it very simple now. Inks are a really big topic, and I plan on doing a video about them in the future. But for now, this is a great go-to. And you could also use your old-fashioned office supply ink as well. So I'm going to give you a quick little demonstration of positive and negative space, because it is important to understand what material you're going to leave and what material you're going to take away. That, of course, creates your design. And it's one of those things that you sort of learn more as you go along, but hopefully this little demonstration will give you a good idea and a good place to start. So these two stamps are going to give you a good example of positive and negative space. The stamp designs are exactly alike, the circles, but the stamp on the left, I removed the rubber material inside the circles, and that created the negative space inside the circles. The stamp on the right, I removed the rubber material on the outside of the circles, making that the negative space. And it does create quite a difference in the design. So positive and negative space is definitely going to have an impact on your design, and it's just going to be some trial and error. You just want to remember the basic thing that any of the material that you remove is going to create negative space, and any of the material that stays is going to be your positive space. So you'll get used to working that out as you make more stamps. We're going to start sketching out our design, and you want to just have a loose hand while you start sketching out these concentric circles. You want them to be a little wobbly, a little wonky, uneven. You certainly don't want them to be perfect. And you're going to sketch out many, many circles. So just relax and enjoy it and see where it takes you. And it's a good expression, a good relaxation technique. And then you're going to end up with several sheets, hopefully, of different designs that you could potentially use. And you get to choose. So here I've decided to pick a pretty simple one to move forward with. I think it's a really good habit to get into using tracing paper to transfer your design to the rubber material. And there's a lot of reasons for that, but primarily you're not going to end up with any kind of surprises, no mirrored images. And it's especially important for letters and numbers, because drawing right on the rubber material and then you carve that out and you stamp it, it's not going to be what you think. So I think it's a great habit to get into using the tracing paper. Certainly, if you want to sketch your design out on a scratch piece of paper or in your sketchbook, then just put your tracing paper right on top of that, trace it, and then transfer that to your rubber material. Now we're going to transfer our design to the rubber material, and this is a sheet that I have used already. I've cut away a lot of different pieces. I have my design on my tracing paper. You want to make sure you know right where you're going to put your design, because once you burnish it, it does stay there. Even though it's pencil, it won't erase off of your rubber material. So I've tried a lot of different things, kneaded eraser, it doesn't come off. So you want to make sure that you get your design right in the spot where you want it. And I like to get a really high yield from my rubber material. And what that means is I find just the right spot where I'm going to put my design and burnish it. And I'm going to put it right up next to this edge. See, I could put it over here or in the middle, and I'm going to end up with all that wasted space around the perimeter of my design. So I think it's important to get your design inched up, nudged up next to the most usable spot. I hope that makes sense. Once you have it in the spot you think is optimal, you're going to burnish it in place. And I'm just going to use my fingernail. Back of my finger works really well. The one thing you want to make sure of that you don't shift the tracing paper. You can certainly tape it into place. And you also want to make sure that the design is fully transferred before you remove the tracing paper from the rubber material. And I think we're doing pretty good here. Now we're going to remove our design from the larger sheet of rubber material, and I'm just going to use my blade with my cutting mat and very carefully cut it away. Here I have 3 of the same designs transferred out. I'm pretty sure I got away with a single transfer from one piece of paper. You might have to go back over your lines a little bit, but they came through pretty dark, so I'm going to use them. And I cut them all away from the material, and I'm ready to go. This first stamp that we're going to carve, we're only going to be taking away the line that is drawn. So the negative space will be where the black line is. Very basic, very straightforward. Okay, holding your blade in your hand, cradle it in between your thumb and your forefinger. And sometimes I find that my hand will scoot down the blade as I'm carving a lot. So just make sure to take time and reposition your hand, that you have it in a nice spot. It seems to work better, but of course find what works for you. And you want to start very gently. Just go right along the surface of the material, following the line that you drew or that you transferred. Nice and slow. And as you can see, I'm turning the material, not the blade. Okay, so you want to just keep working around the rest of the design, removing the line, creating the negative space where the line was, and nice and slow. Now with your cutting mat, you want to remove the perimeter of the design, and I go at about a 15-degree angle with my blade away from the design towards the outside, and I go nice and slow. I'm not really too concerned if I miss a few spots and leave a few scratchy edges. I sort of like that look, but you just want to take your time and go around the edge of the stamp to remove the outside of the circle. Sometimes you're going to find that you're going to have to go back in with your blade and recut the area that you think you cut through but didn't. So that's very normal, and just take your time. Here's the stamp that I carved, and I mounted it with double stick tape on my little acrylic mount. And I'm just going to use some ink to give it a test stamp. Okay, now that stamp isn't very interesting, I have to admit, but it's just a very basic approach to showing you guys how to start carving. But on my IGTV, I have a little demo of how I take this particular stamp and make it a lot more interesting. So the link for that is below, so be sure to check that out. But for now, we got 2 more stamps to carve, and they're going to be a lot more interesting and a lot more fun. So let's get going. Okay, on this stamp, we are going to remove the rubber material that is not drawn with the pencil mark. So what that looks like is we're going to start in the middle, and we're going to insert our blade at a little bit of an angle away from the drawn line, and we're going to slowly and easily turn the material until we come all the way back around to where we started, and we will remove the center. So ideally you're looking at, let's just take that little piece out right there. So ideally you're looking at leaving the drawn lines. So here you can see that I did remove some of the line that I had drawn on the rubber material. And you can go back in and you can certainly add the lines back. This is good for making sure that you're not going to get too close to the edge when you go back in to remove the next round of material. So again, we're going to start with our blade a little bit at an angle, going from the inside circle towards the next circle, leaving just enough space where that drawn line is. Nice and slow, going all the way around. So now we're going to go from the other angle. We're going to be angling towards the inside of the circle, starting up against that next line, angling it in towards. Now when I get to this really tight space, I'm going to pull the tip of my blade up, because if I'm angling it down really low, it's going to go underneath that inside circle, and I don't want that to come loose. Then I'm going to go slowly all the way around, making sure in the thick parts that it's a little deep, and it worked really well. Here I'm just giving it a little cleanup, smoothing out some of the edges, and then I'll proceed. Here with this last design, we're going to carve the lines of the stamp, and we're going to make all of the circles independent of themselves. And this is what that looks like. Here we're using a number 2 V-shaped blade. It is larger and wider with a deeper cut. So that's going to be what we're going to use to go around on top of the lines directly and just only remove the line itself. So we're going to be removing the circles independently from each other, and we're going to use the Exacto blade. Now you could stick your blade straight down perpendicular and saw in an up and downward motion, and that might give you more ragged edges than you want. So I have found that just sticking the blade straight down through the rubber material, in through the groove to the bottom of the mat, and then just slowly turn the stamp while the blade cuts through all the way. It's probably a good idea to start on the most interior circle than where I started. It makes it more stable, especially on this little tiny circle. It can shift and it's going to be a little challenging, so just go nice and slow. Always making sure that your blade is perpendicular so that you don't encroach on the other areas of your stamp. I think these stamps are so much fun, and when I stamp them, I don't line them up at all. I keep them offset from each other, and it really is a fun way to play with positive and negative space. And one more tip, when you're storing this little set of stamps, if you store it all nested together, you'll be sure to hang on to the little guy for sure, but you'll be able to keep all the pieces together. Here we are with our stamp cleaning tip, and what I like to use are these little replacement pads for paint edgers or paint trimmers. The little flat plastic that has all the fibers or the hairs sticking up are really good for cleaning your stamp. They come in a packet of 2. I'll leave a link below. And what I do is I just put them in a little to-go container or a deli container where it will fit, and add some water, and yes, it will get discolored over time. Certainly you could use a terry cloth towel or any kind of old towel or rag and a little bit of water to clean your stamps off with. It's just always a good idea to have something to clean your stamps. Well, that was a lot of fun. I had fun. I learned a lot. I hope you learned a lot too. And this is YouTube. You guys know what to do if you like this video. watching. I appreciate it.